Hello everyone, I have a question for you all. What is it that you're most scared of? Before we start today's video, I want to say a massive thank you to my friend Creaks Peeks for appearing on today's video. Make sure you go check out her channel and subscribe to her. She's a really nice person and has a great narrating voice. Thank you to her. I'm going to be doing some really interesting changes to my channel soon. They're actually going to come over the following week, so make sure you stay posted for that. I'm honestly really excited for it. But for this week, let's get into the video. This is a really weird story, one that I'd say is a very close call. Where me and my friends were about 14 or 15, we used to go camping in the woods by our home. A place called the Punchy that was pretty close to an old church and a graveyard, but far enough away to creep you out. Well, anyway, we used to take 2 tents and obviously not tell our parents we would steal beer to take with us. There was this one time that a few girls from school come too. Anyway, story goes, we were getting drunk and playing dares. Typical teen stuff. It's pretty late and some people had gone home, so now there's about 7 of us, including myself. It's dark now, about 10 PM. We had split up into 2 tents. We were still drinking and generally playing games that revolved around weird stuff. This is when I hear footsteps coming from the trees outside the tents. I find this weird, so stuck my head through the opening. Nothing there. This weirds me out, but I forgot about it after about 5 minutes. Then it happened again. I look. Nothing. This begins to really weird me out. So I ask if anybody else has noticed it. They say no. So I'm thinking I'm drunk and I'm hearing things. Next thing, I hear like something brush against a tent. If you ever run your finger along a tent, you know the distinctive sound it makes. Now you'd recognize the sound from anywhere. But the tent had 3 sections. I couldn't see it move, like it wasn't the section we're in that had been touched. At this point, everyone else has noticed it too, and the entire tent goes silent. You could hear a pin drop, and it stayed that way for about 2 minutes. Now, if you've ever been in a situation like this, the silence is deafening. It feels like breaking the silence will have dire consequences. My friend goes, "You hear that?" We then say, "Yeah, what was it?" I say a branch or something, because I really don't know what else to say, but I want to say something. We stick our heads out the tent. Once again, nothing's there. I was certain somebody was out there. I just got that gut feeling you get when you know, and I felt like I knew. Our tent's in the middle of the woods, but inside a clearing. There's no branches anywhere close enough to be touched by the tent. Also, no paths, so nobody would have a reason to be near. We carry on believing we're mad. Then, out of nowhere, something hit the tent very hard. We gasp, and back up to the side of the tent, opposite to the opening. Not that it would have done any good. It's a tent. I realise that something's definitely up. We grab the bat. I can't remember what my friend said, but I remember it being something to do with it could be our friends that are pranking us. This put me into a state of ease. I felt a lot better now, though I weren't sure if I believed this or not. So I agreed to go and look around a bit. My friend left the tent laughing and asking our friends to show themselves. But we didn't find anyone. Maybe it's like the jig was up, they had their scare and just went back. I walk over to next door's tent, telling them to stop pranking us and that it's annoying. Because I know one of them's done it. We go back to my tent, then my friend in the next door says, which was only a 3 yards away, he was gonna go for the toilet and if he could borrow the flashlight. I threw it outside the tent and carried on talking to the others. About a minute later, he pops his head in and says he needs a flashlight once again. I said I just threw it for him. He told me that he never saw it because he was putting more jackets on to go outside. We assumed the flashlight rolled away, so we had a little look but didn't find anything. I found this weird because there wasn't anywhere for it to go. The ground was fairly level. I couldn't see it roll in anywhere, not to mention it's bright green and it's a torch. It should stand out. So I lent my friend a lantern and said be quick because we would have no light. I didn't like the idea of no light considering things were getting weird, and tried to convince him to piss without the lantern, but he wasn't having any of it. He walks off. We carry on talking. There's 6 of us in the tent at this point, and my friend's girlfriend didn't want to be alone while he went to pee. Next minute, my friend sticks his head back in the tent and says, "Hey, I'm not joking. There's a guy out there." I thought he was messing around, but I panic because it's not one of our friends. I stuck my head outside the tent. Surely enough, no one's there. But my friend was just standing there, beyond the tree line, and my friend looked so scared, so I took his word for it at this point. The girls were panicking. I didn't really know what to do now. We whispered amongst ourselves that we should go and ask the guy what he's doing here, and if our friend was seeing things. We agreed that 3 of us would go. We took the little bat and walked beyond the tree line. Sure enough, the guy stood there. He had long messy hair and a beard, but was slim as anything, dressed in camo gear. My friend said, "What's he doing here?" He replied blankly, saying, "I'm walking." We said, "Why are you in the middle of nowhere? And why has he been by our tent?" He said, "They ain't yours." This guy's weird. I mean really creepy. He then walked off into the woods, and we were deciding whether or not we should go. We decided to leave, but it was dark. It would have been hard to find the way with only the lantern. We decided to sit on it, so we all got into my tent, then waited it out. About 2 hours passed, and we couldn't sleep. Next minute, I hear an unzipping sound. This really creeps me out because it was coming from my friend's tent. We're all in my tent. Everyone starts whispering, "What the hell is that noise?" Then my friend and I stick our heads out. There's nothing there again. So we all decide to go and look. So we walk over to the tent. My friend gasps, saying, "We need to go." I walk around the other side of the tent. It's been slashed open, corner to corner, and inside, there's a little green light. Now, this made me freak out because A, we knew this guy wasn't playing around. He just busted an expensive tent, and B, he had something sharp to cut the tent fast without tearing it. We walked back over to the other tent and got the girls and most of our stuff, and we started walking towards the road through the woods. The most messed up thing about this is every so often you could repeatedly hear whispering rapidly, repetitively, but not long enough to figure out what it was saying or where it was coming from. It felt as though we'd been waiting an eternity. This guy could have been anywhere. After like 35 minutes, we get to the road and follow the road home because we didn't want to tell our parents we'd been drinking. The next day we go back and our tents are gone. A few weeks later, somebody was chased by a weird knife-wielding guy not far from where we camped who had camo on. He must have been really crazy or like a drug dealer or something related. This messed me up for a good while, and I stopped going camping after this.
My name is Maria. I am a biology student from Ohio who's currently studying abroad in Australia. I work at a wildlife conservatory in New South Wales. It's mostly labor work. I clean the enclosures and give some of our smaller animals baths. I am also responsible for feeding Anita, our 16-foot saltwater crocodile. Twice a day, I bring dead chickens to her enclosure and toss them to her from the shore of her personal pond. It's dangerous work, but Anita doesn't frighten me anymore. I've learned to interpret her behavior, and I know how to react accordingly. I know when she's hungry, when she's feeling annoyed. I even know when she's feeling playful. Anita and I have a rapport, or at least, as much of a rapport as a tiny pink bag of meat can have with the largest carnivorous species of reptile on the planet. But the thing is, she started acting straight a few weeks ago. She would be slow in coming to her feeding, or she wouldn't come at all. I haven't been able to figure out her mood lately. I talked to the conservatory's veterinarians, but there was no sign of anything physically wrong with Anita. At first, I thought maybe there was an impending natural disaster, as animals are known to behave abnormally before an earthquake or storm, but that didn't hold up, since none of the other animals changed their behavior. Whatever was happening, it had to be confined to Anita's enclosure or Anita herself. We played around with the idea that maybe it was me. Maybe Anita was behaving strangely because she no longer wanted to interact with me specifically. So, for a week, we tried new feeders. 2 different people would take turns feeding her each day. It didn't work. Anita stopped eating altogether until I resumed feeding her. I have to admit, as much as I wanted to find out what was going on, a part of me was glad she still wanted to interact with me. I took it upon myself to do an inspection of Anita's enclosure. It took the better part of a day to search an area that large, but I found something. There was a patch of loose soil around a section of a perimeter fence, and a gap dug down from under the fence. Something dug its way into the enclosure. I don't know how we missed it for so long, but I brought the discovery to my boss, and the enclosure was searched again, this time by a team. Apart from the dug-out fence, they found no trace of an unknown animal inside Anita's enclosure. There were no footprints or droppings. It was assumed by most that Anita had eaten whatever was unfortunate enough to break into her home. I wasn't convinced though. Something caused the change in my friend's behavior, and I could tell the other conservatory employees were starting to lose interest. The vets assured them that Anita was healthy. I knew the conservatory wasn't going to invest much more time or resources into investigating Anita's problem, so I came up with a plan to do it myself. Night was the only time Anita wasn't observed, so I would stay with her one night and watch for trouble. Sneaking past the night guards and cameras would have been too difficult, so I opted to not leave at all. I parked in a different parking lot, so no one would notice my car still there after hours and when my shift ended. I hid in the locker room until I was certain all of my co-workers had gone home for the night. I didn't want to enter Anita's enclosure after dark, so I walked the perimeter fence from outside. It's never a good idea to enter the territory of a massive predator after dark, no matter what kind of rapport you have with them. I used night vision goggles to see into the enclosure. I found Anita on the back of her pond, looking eerie in the green light of the night vision. Her mouth was open and pointed toward the sky. It was a bizarre position for a crocodile to be, and I couldn't think of a reason for it. There were no clinging birds around to pick food, and leeches from between her teeth, and even if there were, there's no reason for her to tilt her head towards the sky. Then it happened. Anita's eyes convulsed, and she started making muffled barking noises. An arm reached out of her throat and grabbed the side of her snoot. It pulled the rest of itself out. It was humanoid shape, with a torso about the size of a toddler's and limbs that were too long in proportion to the rest of its body. I could not tell what color it was through the night vision, but it looked wetly, like a newt, or maybe that was Anita's body fluids making it appear that way. I couldn't move, I couldn't even breathe, until I saw that thing rear its head and look directly at me, like its eyes met mine through the goggles. I dropped the goggles and fled for the front gate, screaming all the way. I don't remember much of the next few hours. The security guard found me crying hysterically at the gate and brought me inside. He called the director, who came back to the facility and listened to me ramble about the thing I saw crawl from Anita's body. As you can probably guess, no one believed me. It looks like my days at the conservatory are almost over. I wasn't supposed to be there at night, and after my crazy story, it seems like most people think I was staying after to do drugs. They've suspended my duties, and I imagine I'll soon be on a plane back to the States. No word on whether or not this will affect my career. I want to say goodbye to Anita, but now, every time I walk by her enclosure, her eyes follow me, and I don't think it's my friends watching me.
When I was 19 years old, I worked at a summer camp as a counsellor and lived at the camp on weekends when there were no children present. Weekends weren't scary, per se, but because everyone was more or less doing their own thing, they could put us a little on edge, being more or less alone. There was one Friday night in particular. I went into town with two other young women who worked at the camp. We got back very late in the evening. Two of us were staying in the lodge, which is one of the first buildings you see as you enter the camp. The other girl was staying in one of the cabins, which were about half a mile away. Most of the walk was through the woods. We begged her to just stay in the lodge with us that night. It was so late. She refused our offer though. We said to her to at least let us take the truck up there so she didn't have to walk. She wanted to walk at night though. It didn't scare her. We finally relented and let her go, asking her to call us when she got back to the cabin. 13 minutes after she left, we see lights in the driveway of our camp. It was a camper. My friend told me not to worry about it. There was a group coming up to use the camp facilities for a week the next evening, and one of their leaders always brought her camper. She tended to arrive at weird times, so the fact that she was there at 3 AM was nothing. 10 to 15 minutes later, we hear someone at the door of the lodge trying to get in. Thinking it's her, we go to the door, but we see a man there. He's trying to get in, not knocking, simply trying to enter. Swallowing our fear, we go to the screen door and say to him, "What is he doing?" He tells us that he's looking for the Eagles campground. We actually got people arriving at the camp asking about that a lot and for directions, so we tell him. He then says, "I can't hear anything. Open the door." To be clear, we're talking throughout the screen. There's no way his hearing was obstructed by the screen. He was trying to get to us. We couldn't do that if we tried, and obviously we call the police. We repeat the directions. He goes away. We relock the door and check to make sure that all the other doors are still shut. Content that the lodge door was shut. We armed ourselves with butcher knives because we got scared. We heard him start up his camper. We look outside and notice that he's driving into the camp, not leaving. We tried calling the third girl, who was undoubtedly alone, but we don't get an answer. We tried calling the boss, but got no answer. It was at that point that we realized that he had come from the direction he said. But if so, he would have driven right by the Eagle campground. So why is he here? We debated calling 911, but decided against it. We kept trying to call the girl from our group, but never reached her. We never saw him leave the camp. But in the morning, our friend was okay, and we couldn't find the camper anywhere. So he must have left. The morning after, we checked up on the third girl and discovered the camper was no longer on the property. This meant that he left well after 4, and who knows how much of the camp he saw. We're pretty sure that he was scouting it out to come again. We met up with some of the male counsellors who had spent the night at the Eagle campground because they weren't allowed to drink on the camp property. They told us that their tent had been set up by the entry of the campground. No one showed up there that night, which makes it even creepier. We never found out exactly what he wanted. I just hope that he's not still out there lurking and scouting out campgrounds.
Every summer, my aunt, uncle, and younger cousin go on a vacation for about 5 days. In the more recent years, they have started asking me to house sit for them. They have a 2-story house in a nice neighborhood. It has 2 basements, a basement and a cellar though, so I guess you could say it's 4 levels altogether. I live there with their dog and cat, take care of the house and flowers, and pretty much relax. The first few days were awesome, just going on walks with Jewel, the dog, and laying around watching TV, maybe the occasional tanning session, with my best friend outside. I was making money too, how could I complain? Well, around day 3, my best friend Sam was spending the night. We were having some wine and watching a hilarious show. Around 11, we decided to go to sleep, as we were both pretty exhausted and she had to be up early. She took the guest room and I slept directly across the hall in my aunt and uncle's. We both left our doors open, so with the lights on, we could see one another. We put the lights out and Jewel and I lay down. Within 5 minutes, I hear Sam scream and bolt to turn on her light. I sit up. "What the hell? There's something scratching the wall," she yelled, backing out of the guest room into the hallway. Sam's super paranoid, so I wasn't too concerned with her reaction. It's not the first time she's sworn she heard something. "It's probably just Tinkerbell, the cat," I reassure her. "Well, can you just take a look?" So I walk into the room. Jewel follows me to the bed. I kneel down and looked under. There is absolutely no way a human could fit under this bed, but I have known the cat to hide under there from time to time. This time, though, there's nothing there but shoeboxes for storage. Look, it's nothing, not even the cat. You're just hearing things. Again. I tell her. Sam knows she can be overly paranoid. So she kinda laughs and gets back into bed, not super concerned anymore. I was back to my room and I see the light turned off behind me. Before I can even get comfortable, Sam screams again and runs straight into my room yelling, "No, I'm not kidding. There's something in there. It's scratching the walls." This time, I got a little nervous. It's not like her to freak out that badly. She may say she hears something, but she doesn't generally run around yelling. I turn the hallway light on and walk into the guest room, flipping that switch up as well. I put on a hard face and pretend she's just being silly. I tell her to look under the bed and I'll lift it up, hoping that I maybe just didn't see the cat behind the boxes. I lift the bed and she sees nothing. No cat, just boxes. I look around the room a little. We didn't find anything. Now she refuses to go back to bed in here. Instead, she sleeps in my cousin's room down the hall. While I'm a little freaked out about how she is reacting, I climb back into bed, telling myself that it's nothing and she's only being like this because it's an unfamiliar place to her. Jewel decides to join her in my cousin's room. So, I am alone, a little shaken up. I hold the covers over my head. I am exhausted. Just before I drift off, I think I hear the closet slide open. Like a child hearing a monster, I hold the covers tighter and wait to fall asleep. The next day, we barely discuss the happenings of the night. Sam goes home. I'm back to being myself. As the day gets later, my mind is slowly distracted away from even thinking about last night. The neighbors bring their dog over to play in the backyard with Jewel. We chat for a while. They take their dog back once it starts getting dark. I can tell Jewel is a little bummed to see her friend leave. Finally, it's dark. Jewel and I are all cozied up on the couch watching TV again. The phone rings. I answer. Hello? Hey, Alfalfa. It's Sandra from across the street. I just wanted to let you know that the garage door is open. That's strange. I don't even have a car. It definitely hadn't been opened this morning. Weird. Oh, all right. Well, thanks. I'll shut that, I reply. We hung up, and I head outside in the dark to close the door. My mind is running through the day over and over, finding no answer to how and when it would have been opened. I don't question it too much though, trying not to scare myself. I go back inside, locking the door behind me. I go to the front and lock that door too. Then it's back to the same old, Jewel and I hanging on the couch. The doorbell rings. Now, who is at the door at 9:15 p.m.? I don't live in this neighborhood, and most of the neighbors are aware that my aunt and uncle are out of town. So I look out the peephole. A pizza delivery guy? He's standing there, look kinda nervous. I crack the door just enough to ask him what the deal is. I think maybe he got lost. Pizza for this address? He says, smiling. I'm sorry, but I didn't order a pizza. Kinda giving him a weird face. I can tell that makes him a little nervous, like maybe he's new to the job and worried he'll be in trouble for messing this up. A large cheese pizza? Did someone order it for you maybe? He says, clearly worried now. Not that I know of. Is it paid for? I asked. Well, no. Sorry. I'm new, I don't really know how to handle this situation. He replies. I smell the pizza and my stomach kinda grumbles a little bit. It's probably one of my cousin's friends, trying to prank her, but getting me instead. I feel sorry for the guy, so I dish out a few bucks and just let him off easy. He apologizes for the mix-up, adding, If you want to find out where the pizza came from, I don't have the number on me, but you can call the restaurant and ask to look it up for you. All right, no problem. Have a nice night, I say as I shut the door. So I have the pizza, but I'm still really curious. I figure I'll just call the place and get the number so I can tell my cousin which of her friends was pranking her. The line's ringing and I am waiting anxiously, because the more I smell that sweet combination of cheese and sauce, the hungrier I'm getting. Maria's Pizzeria, how can I help you? I explain my situation to the guy on the phone, who happens to be the manager. Oh, no problem, ma'am. Let me just look that right up. I sit listening to him fumbling around, looking up the number. I hear an aha, as he finds it, then begins to recite the digits back to me. I feel my stomach tense as my appetite leaves me. My hands begin to shake and my eyes stink. The call came from inside the house.
For some background, my parents' house is in the suburbs, and the end of our street is a major roadway. Our neighbourhood is situated around the woods. So I have this habit of falling asleep on the couch in my den after getting home from work around 10 PM. What seems like 15 minutes actually turns into waking up everywhere from 2 to 4 in the morning. 4 weeks ago, I was completely out from the day. It was an unusually cool night, but not so much that the window shouldn't have been opened. I opened the windows situated behind my couch, and no sooner did I doze off. I woke up around 2:30 and thought, well, time to take my makeup off before I doze off again. That's when I heard what sounded like an iPhone alarm. This didn't strike me as odd since I'd been trying to break my habit of falling asleep on the chair, setting an alarm. I walk into the family room where my purse is, yet when I reach my screen, only the time is displayed. Convinced that I'm stuck half asleep and half awake, I trudge back to the den. Now neither of my parents have iPhones. My next logical explanation was that our neighbour left his window open and it's his alarm. However, this is impossible given the amount of space between our neighbours and our home. The next thought made me go numb. The radar tone is coming from our driveway, specifically where my parents park their cars. I shut off the lamp and radar continued. For the next 5 or so minutes, I sit in the dark, paralysed with fear. None of our house lights are on, and neither were my neighbours. So who could be around our home at this hour? Suddenly, the alarm stopped. I then finally breathed a sigh of relief, ready for bed. No sooner did I sit up from the couch, the radar sounded again, and from the same direction. Panicked, I hurried to the family room and checked that our deadbolt was set. The most alarming realization I had when I felt the deadbolt was that it's already secure, so whoever's in our driveway knew not to stand there in order to not trip off our motion sensor. The next day, I told my parents at breakfast. They were extremely concerned with this. We're on alert for the rest of the week. The weekend came without incidents, and the next week, the seemingly phantom iPhone sound was basically forgotten. Then, just about 2 weeks ago, the same scenario played out again. This time, I woke up to the radar tone again, coming from the same part of our driveway. The next day, when my parents and I checked around the home, We found no vandalism to our vehicles or anywhere in the yard. Our neighbour too was completely baffled by the situation. My parents and I always adhere to locking our doors, but saying that both incidents haven't put us on edge is a complete understatement.
A friend of mine recently bought a second-hand laptop from a busy garage sale. The seller said that the thing won't turn on. Being the nerd that he is, my friend got it working and found a strange letter saved on it. He mailed it to me after I asked him if I could share it here. So here goes. Dear Matthew, I'm writing to you to tell you that I know everything that you don't want me to know. I know you must dread hearing this, especially coming from me, but I really need you to listen to what I have to say. A few years ago, I watched you come home every night smelling of alcohol, with your eyes drooling out of their sockets. I waited for you, resolute to see you arrive safely. Yet, you never so much as muttered a quick greeting into my direction, and you always just went straight to your computer, where you started gaming sessions that persisted into early mornings, leaving me isolated in that bed that felt far too big for me alone. I watched you not care about your persona, and I understood it to an extent. Many articles online claim that people tend to let themselves go because they don't expect their partners to lose attraction. And we have been together for 13 years after all. A stomachache, your disgusting habits, and bad odor because I care for you. You tested my patience a few months ago when I watched you not come home until morning. I followed you sometimes, lurking outside the pubs. I watched you through the windows as you took the same seat in the dark corner every night and ordered one beer after the other until you passed out. Bartenders took pity on you, because for some reason they never once threw you out. And then, last month, I followed you again, expecting for your nightly routine to be the same. But it wasn't. There you sat at the bar, with your posture more confident than before, while you spoke to a beautiful woman seated next to you. Needless to say, you shattered my heart that night, and as I sat in the car outside, so many questions passed me. How could I have been so stupid as to let things go this far? Your attraction to me had become questionable, but how could I not think to do something about it? You were the person I was meant to spend forever with, but this betrayal made me certain that you were a mistake. I hated you after that, even though I never hated you directly. Through my bitterness, I made sure you had only freezing showers when you came home at night. I replaced your fresh sandwiches with rotten ones when I had the chance. I dumped half a liter of cat piss on your side of the bed, and I pulled the covers from your body every night. Then, the day came that changed everything. You woke up sober and dressed neatly, and this suspicious behavior had me trailing you once more as soon as you left the house. I watched from far as you bought nice flowers and what seemed to be a picnic basket. Of course, you were preparing to meet her, and that was something I didn't want to watch, but something made me follow you still. You took me by surprise as your journey led into the cemetery. I kept my distance as you paused near a grave for what seemed like hours. It took me a considerate amount of time to recognize the tears on your cheeks, 'cause I swear I had never seen you cry before. You left the flowers on the grave and walked away with the basket still in hand. I went home after that. I didn't need to see any more. I'm in the kitchen as I'm writing this on your laptop, and you're in the bathroom. It's nearly 1:30, and that woman I saw you with at the bar is still sound asleep in our bed, but I understand it now. Matthew. Now I know why you're sobbing faintly in the bathroom, and why my name stood on the gravestone. I understand, and I forgive you. You can stop grieving now and be with that stranger on my side of the bed with a clear mind. Just remember that I'll be near and watching over you, as I always had, for once your lifetime ends, you will belong to me again. The laptop has refused to turn on after I got this copy.
So every summer, I go to this camp deep in Pennsylvania called Ft.Creaks Bible Camp. I was with grade 11 to 12 age group. There's been many stories passed around over the years about evil creatures living in the woods. One's a goat man. He was described to be like the devil himself, having red eyes. Some claim they saw him. I never believed them though. There used to be 5 different sleeping bags at the campsite. 3 for guys, 2 for girls. But a couple of years ago, sleeping area 5 burned to the ground one night, while people were camping there. No one knows how the fire started. The cabins don't even have electricity. And the fire officials said it wasn't a forest fire that caused Unit 5 to burn down. That was strange enough. Now, in Unit 4, the furthest away from civilization, one night our cabin door swung wide open and crashed against a wall as though somebody tried to kick it in. But we shined a flashlight outside and investigated. We didn't see anyone though. We told some people the next morning, but didn't think much of it. Keep in mind, the weather is still. Was this a sign that we shouldn't be there? This is where stuff got insane. It was the second to last night before we're supposed to go home. Once again, the weather's calm. It's around 2:30 when my entire cabin was awoken by the loud sound of our wooden door slamming open again. Moments later, we hear a loud cracking noise. I notice a large tree next to our cabin is falling towards us. I believe that in the split second I looked out of the window, and at the tree, I saw something dark fleeing the area. The tree then fell onto our cabin, crashed through the roof onto my cabin mate's bed. If I had not looked through the window, he would have been crushed to death. The tree's over 100 feet tall. Everyone in the surrounding area come to see what happened and made sure that we're all okay. We looked at the tree. It was cut cleanly across the bottom as though somebody did it with a chainsaw. But there was no one close. We would have heard the cutting. This is silent. It's impossible. I truly believe that someone or something was trying to kill us or punish us that night. Needless to say, I had my mum take me home right away after that and have never been back since.
When I was 11, my grandfather was telling me a ghost story one day, when I had said, "There are no such thing as ghosts, Grandpa." "Are you sure about that, kiddo?" he had said, with a look of genuine excitement in his eyes. "Absolutely." "I am going to teach you a trick today, kiddo. Look," he said, while raising a finger in front of me. I kept looking at the finger in front of my nose, but I could not see anything else other than his hovering finger and his eager face waiting for me to say something. "I don't really see anything, Grandpa," I blurted out finally. "Obviously you cannot yet. While looking straight, look at the corner of your vision," he said. "How can I look at 2 places at once?" "Just look straight, kiddo, and try focusing on the left or right corner of your vision without looking at it." I tried doing that, but perhaps I had rolled my eyeballs to the left a bit, too much, at which Grandpa screamed, "No! Keep your eyes fixed on me. Then try focusing on what's at the left and right corners of your visual field. Don't move your eyeballs. Don't you see anything?" I tried doing what he said. I saw nothing. "I don't see anything, Grandpa," I said, and watched the excitement on the face of my grandfather drain away. With a disappointed sigh, he said, "Maybe you will, someday." I didn't tell anyone about this interaction. I'm glad he told me this, since this would end up saving me soon. My grandfather passed away when I turned 13. I wish I could tell you that my family was sad and everyone was devastated, but they were not. My grandfather was considered weird and creepy by everyone in our family. After Grandma passed away, he tried committing suicide by jumping off a building. That failed, but the damages to his brain were substantial, and he wasn't the same person after that. He would sit alone and talk about weird things at himself, if he didn't find anyone else listening to his make-believe stories. He was an avid believer of ghosts and demons and believed he would never die. During the past year of his life, he would drink all day and deliberately urinate at different corners of his room walls, saying he was creating a demon trap. My mom had to clean all that up. As morbid as it sounds, he was a major burden to all of us during the final year of his life, and my parents were more or less relieved that he was gone. My grandfather's room was assigned to me, while my elder sister got to keep the room upstairs. I was initially ecstatic about this. This was the first time I would have a room all to myself. I started to regret it terribly from the very first night. That first night, all of a sudden, my bed had started shaking in the middle of the night. It was as if someone, or something, was deliberately pushing the bed. I was so afraid to get up. That's when I heard the distinct sound of footsteps near the wall. All my senses were heightened at that point. I felt as if I could hear someone breathing next to me. I had never been that afraid in my entire life. I felt frozen on the bed, unable to move my body. Sometimes a fear of the unknown is more preferable than facing a real concrete danger. I pretended to be asleep, hoping that whatever was in that room would leave me alone and go away. With my eyes shut, I curled up on the bed and tried not to scream. I thought that not opening my eyes would make it go away. That's when it happened. A set of cold hands grasped my legs firmly. I did what any 13-year-old would have done at this point. I screamed at the top of my voice. As I screamed, the grip got tighter, till my mom rushed into my room, flinging the door open. She turned on the lights to see her 13-year-old son sweating profusely and scared shitless. There was no one else there. Whatever was present a minute ago had suddenly disappeared as soon as my mom came in. I told her it was a bad dream, and I would convince myself that it was, till the same thing happened on the next night. Keep in mind that I was only 13 years old at that time. The next night, when it happened, I did not scream. As soon as I heard the footsteps, I got out of the bed and ran towards the switch to turn on the lights. The room was empty, but it still felt occupied. I could still hear footsteps near the wall where my bed was located. The lights apparently didn't make it go away. That's when I noticed it. At the corner of my eye, I saw my grandfather sitting, smiling in the creepiest way possible, showing as many teeth as he can, smiling from ear to ear. I looked towards the corner directly, and there was suddenly nothing there. Again, I tried looking at it through the corner of my eyes, and there he was. He had the widest, toothy grin plastered across his pale face, and it seemed as if he was trying to reach for me from the corner of the room. I would never forget that creepy smile, and to this day, simply thinking about that gives me chills. It wasn't my grandfather. It couldn't be. To this day, I firmly believe that it wasn't. It was some otherworldly creature with my grandfather's face. It had crooked legs and thin hands, and its thin, pale body was filled with scars. The sight of it made me sick to my stomach. The thing tried to reach out to me, keeping his grin intact, but it couldn't move towards me. It was then that I realized that whatever that was couldn't move away from the walls of the room. I tried moving the bed, trying to bring it towards the center, but I couldn't. I was just 13 at the time, and all this had terrified me so much that I chose to keep the lights on and sit at the center of the room that night. I kept checking the corner of my vision, but it was soon gone, but I was too afraid to sleep that night. My mom found me sleeping at the center of the room, on the floor. That morning, after an awkward breakfast, I decided to move my bed to the center of the room where it couldn't reach me. Mornings seemed so much better than nights. That night it came again, like it did on all the subsequent nights after that, but I was safe and away from its reach. I slept with the lights on for a couple of days, but then I started turning that off. On some nights I would find excuses to sleep over at any of my friends' houses, which my parents were cool with, but that was rare and probably twice a month. The rest of the days I would sleep at noon and pretend to be asleep at night, always vigilant of its presence. Every night it would make sounds, scratch the walls, and try reaching for me from the walls of the room. I was only safe because my bed was at the center. Had my crazy grandfather not taught me the corner vision trick, I would have never realized how to get away from it. Every night it came, like a recurrent dream I couldn't escape from. You might think that, after a while, I got used to it, but one can never get used to something like this. Each night the thing came back to haunt me. Each night felt like hell. The fact that my bed was at the center and I was sure it wouldn't be able to reach me was what helped me to endure all those years. This went on till I went to college in another state and had to move away. I wish I could tell you that all was in my head. This was just the overactive imagination of a 13-year-old and nothing more. No, it wasn't. You could choose to believe whatever you want, but I will tell you this. Last year, while I was away, my parents had decided it was time to renovate their own room after my dad's promotion. So, for a week, they decided to use my room downstairs and sleep there, till the renovation of their own room was complete. They managed to stay there for 3 days. They spent the 4th day packing their stuff and moved to a new place on the 5th.
My wife and I both moved down south last January and rented a nice home in what we thought was a nice part of town. We are both prior military, and through various means, I managed to get my hands on a really nice government-issued axe. I left it out back like a dummy, and the next time I went to chop some wood, it was gone. I was pretty upset and thought about reporting it, but it was honestly more trouble than it was worth. After my axe went missing, I started to keep a close eye on the people who lived directly behind us. We had been warned on our first day in the neighborhood that they're into drugs, and it turns out they were more than a little violent. I was absolutely sure they took my axe, and I could see a little shed on their property where I thought they were keeping it. Their violence to themselves and others got to the point where I ended up installing a security camera so I could keep tabs on what they were doing when they went up from my office. I could see that one of the guys was clearly off his nut. He was really not with it. He would beat his girlfriend in the yard. I would call the cops. One day, I was at the gas station on the corner getting coffee, and a golden opportunity arose. The crazy meth head and his girlfriend hurriedly pulled their truck into the parking lot and ran inside. The guy's hyperventilating, going nuts, shouting, "Did they see us? Did they see us? Do you know what that means?" And it was at that point that I saw a cop car pull into the diner across the street. I noticed that the meth heads had backed up their truck, and in the bed was 5 children's bicycles. I put 2 and 2 together and figured that they'd stolen the bikes, had a cop following them, got in their head that the police knew they stole them, and tried to hide in the gas station. I paid for my coffee and left. I figured they were so blasted out of their minds that they wouldn't recognize me. I was wrong. So, as soon as I started walking back to my home, I waved the cop over and told him that there were 2 young people inside the station, clearly hiding from him. He said thank you, pulled into the station. About 10 minutes later, I saw another cop pull in through my kitchen window. I waited all day for their crappy truck to pull up into our driveway, so I never saw it. Weeks passed, and we're enjoying our newfound peace and quiet when crap got real. I was at a buddy's home. I was about 8 beers in, and I get a call from my wife. It's 11 at night, so I figured she was calling me to see what was going on, and if she needed a ride back. But when I answered, I heard her sobbing uncontrollably and freaking out. She told me she's watching TV with the dogs when someone knocked on the door. She knew I was out drinking and that I wouldn't drive home, so was admittedly scared. Plus, no one ever uses a side door. I've always made fun of her for being sort of soft and a scaredy cat, but turns out this could have saved her life. Instead of going directly to the door, she used the dog's barking as a distraction and crept into the office where our security system was. If you're unable to watch the footage, it's footage from a camera showing a hooded man crossing the bush line that separates our yard from the meth head's yard. You can make out he's holding an axe in his hand. Once she saw this, she immediately called the police. 2 officers arrived within 5 minutes. They searched the surrounding area, questioned the meth heads about their home, but ultimately nothing ever come of it, and we're waiting to get murdered by our own axe now by these crazy people.
I am 22, and this incident happened a year and a half ago. I had just moved into my first apartment and was in the process of moving in. The door that led into my apartment locks itself automatically when closed, so I was going to the entrance of the apartment complex to get my mail. While talking on the phone with my boyfriend, I returned to my apartment and sat on the bed. While opening the mail, while using the phone, I dropped the phone on the floor and it landed under my bed, so I had to lie on the floor and stretch for it. I saw something that caught my eye. There was someone under my bed. My eyes widened and I choked the urge to scream. The person under my bed was lying still, with his back towards me and his head to his chest, so I could not see his face, and he didn't see me. Trying to be rational, while so many thoughts rushed through my head, I picked up the phone, said, "Sorry, I dropped my phone. I'm just gonna take a shower and call you back." The bathroom is right by my bed, so I hastily walked in, quietly locked the door, turned the shower on, jumped out of my window and called the police. They told me not to wait nearby, but to go across the street and see if anyone comes out of the door of the apartment complex. This was during summer, and it was still light out. I placed myself across the street, hiding behind a car, while watching my open bathroom window and the entry door. I called my boyfriend and he came to me just before the police. I gave them my keys and they went inside. Only moments later, 2 cops came out, holding a thin and tired-looking man. His eyes looked crazy, but he didn't try to get away. The policeman that had stood beside me and comforted me while the police searched through my house told me that the man stood outside my bathroom door with one of my kitchen knives waiting for me to come out. This man had somehow crept into my entry door while I was getting my mail and hid under the bed. The man that was trying to hurt me turned out to be a homeless person and was placed in a mental hospital. My boyfriend moved in with me the very next day.
I grew up in a very safe, very affluent neighborhood. It was unheard of for anyone to lock their cars or homes. And when someone new moved into the neighborhood, it was mere moments before they're welcomed with open arms and doors. Despite being surrounded by what could only be described as one large neighborhood family, my mum was very particular about house rules being followed. One which was never go out alone, walk into a friend's home, go in free. So that way the 2 of you can go off home together and say goodbye there. It was rare, but occasional just 2 of us would be able to sneak out from under my mum's watchful eye. We would go out to get candy or soda. One sweltering day during the summer, I turned 9. I found myself home alone and restless. I decided to take my sister's new cool 10-speed for a spin around the block a few times. Now, even though I was tall for my age, the bike was still a few inches too big for me. I decided that didn't matter. I jumped on it and began pedaling. My first lap around the neighborhood went off without a hitch. Birds are chirping, the sun's shining, the wind's blowing through my curled hair. It was great. Second lap around the block, I passed an older, unfamiliar car parked on the side of the road. The sun reflecting off the giant skyscraper temporarily shocked my vision. On the third lap, I see a car pull off to the side of the road, heading towards me, and a tiny bit of unease began to grow in my stomach as the driver slows down to pass me. I chalked it up to being scared of getting caught out alone, and continued on my way. I picked up speed as I rounded the corner towards my home, and decided to go for one more time around the block. But to make it back so quick, I'd beat my mum home and avoid the trouble I'd be in if she caught me out alone. I hit the bottom of the hill next to our home with some speed and started to climb to the top, slowing more and more the closer I got. By the time I reached the top of the hill, I had to stop to catch my breath. I'm now teetering the bike next to my hip. As I struggled to catch my breath, the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My arms locked on the handlebars. Every inch of my body froze. I'd been caught. I knew it. I heard a car creeping behind me. It had to be my mum, but it wasn't. When relief should have washed over me, the unknown dread only deepened. I turn around and see the same old car, with the same blinding scratch down the side, slowing down right next to me. The man stopped the car right next to my bike on the wrong side of the road, and through his opening window started to ask me if I've seen a stray dog, because he's come off the leash, he lost it. This is a cliche question they warn you about in school. The one every kidnapper supposedly uses. I decided if I answered him firmly and rode my bike away that he would know not to play on me. Plus, he might really want a dog. This is my plan. My terrified body betrayed the plan, and I trembled, no. As I fumbled to my feet, to the pedals of the bike, his car door flings open and lunges at me. I started again as I wobbled past his car, brushing the handle. I try and pedal as fast as I can. I have to make it 50 feet to the driveway. I'm terrified. Running up my front tyre so hard into my neighbour's front step that the wheel bent. My body capsulated over the handlebars. I burst through my neighbour's front door. Eddie, help. He wasn't home. I ran to the kitchen. I really hoped he was there. What are you doing? A man's voice said behind me. I froze, hearing my heartbeat in my ears, feeling the blood pumping through my veins, knowing this it was. I slowly turned around. I really didn't know what else to do at this point. And there stood my neighbour's son. I dissolved into tears, glooping out what happened. He tossed a bent bike into the back of his truck, drove me around the corner to the safety of home. My mum was home, had the look of death in her eyes until she saw my tear-sparked face. The police were called. The neighbours were called. The car had been spotted frantically circling the block a few minutes earlier. He was gone by the time the police arrived.
I have one cat. He's a big tubby, a 13-pounder, but not fat. Weight is like a large furry brick, fuzzy but built solid. Wade does what any ordinary house cat would do. He sleeps most of the daylight away. He plays with fake mice. He closes at one corner of the easy chair. He waves between my legs while I walk. To be brief, he's a fairly normal cat, aside from being of the larger size. I've had him almost 2 years, though I am not sure how old he is, and in all that time he's never set foot in my bedroom. You might say that's fair. Lots of folks don't like pets in their bed, but I am not the reason he won't go in there. The bedroom door is always open. He just refuses to go in, and if you carry him into the room, he will leave as soon as you put him down. I found out why he won't go in last night. So, I got home from work, put on the Netflix show I've been binging, and settled in for a good mind-numbing sitcom. Around 11 p.m., I noticed that I forgot to turn off the bathroom light after I got home and changed. Must have been too tired or too focused on the show to realize it, because you can see all the way down the hallway into the bathroom from the sofa. Now, I almost got up to go trudge down the hall and shut off the light, but what I saw in the bedroom stopped me dead in my tracks. Wade was in there, sitting by the desk near the far wall of the bedroom. Weird. So he looks black silhouetted against the bright white paint of the wall. What made it spooky was his eye shine. It was red. I mean red. Okay, it could be the warm light from my red lamp just making his eyes sort of appear red. I realized this, but the hair on the back of my neck was standing up, and I suddenly didn't want to get up from my spot. I tried calling him. He didn't budge. I tried using the voice I make when I'm about to serve his wet food. No response. I even grabbed his treats and tried shaking the bag of catnip in front of him. Did not move. He just gazed at me with his blank, unfocused stare from down the hallway, with his glowing red reflections in his eyes. I'm still shaking that bag of catnip like an idiot. That's when I felt Wade rub his body against my leg. The real Wade. Needless to say, I almost crapped myself. There's catnip everywhere. When I look back toward the room, Whatever the hell I had just seen was gone, and Wade was sitting at my feet, with his hackles up and his ears back. Bedroom door has been shut for the first time since ever, all day today. Didn't sleep in there last night. While I'm writing this, with Wade in my lap, I can hear something in the bedroom, scratching at the door frame. I've been hearing it on and off all freaking day. I'm looking for a new apartment.
As part of my degree, I was doing a placement year in another city a little over a year ago. This was a city where I didn't know anyone, so I moved into private student halls. The halls are arranged into flats of 5, so there were 5 en-suite bedrooms, then a shared kitchen. The keys were electronic, so your key would open the door to the building, the door to your flat, and the door to your bedroom. There are 4 flatmates, 2 girls and a guy, none of which spoke in English very well, and kept a lot to themselves. They were perfectly friendly, but we only ever had small talk. The 4th flatmate was a really outgoing guy. I saw him a bit more often. He was chattier than the others. They really didn't make much of a social interaction effort compared to him. In the end, I was living in a flat with 4 strangers. Because they're all students, and I was working an 8 to 6 job, we didn't see much of each other. It wasn't an ideal arrangement, but it worked okay. I had friends at work I sometimes went out with. Through some good Tinder fortune, I had a boyfriend that would come over pretty often, so I was pretty settled. I pretty quickly got into a nice routine in days where I had no evening plans. Come home, shower, make food in the kitchen, then retire to my bedroom for the evening. You always hear stories of dodgy flatmates that steal or mess with other people's rooms when they're out. I'd always lock my bedroom whenever I went out, but I figured that there was no point in locking my room if I wasn't in there. But one night, I'd gone through my usual routine and went to bed reasonably early. At around 5 AM, I was awoken by the sound of my bedroom door opening. It takes me a second to wake up and realise what's happening. Then I sit upright. Now, this is 5 AM in the winter, so my room is pitch black, but the corridor light's on, so all I can see is a silhouette of a man standing halfway between the door and my bedroom. In hindsight, screaming would probably be an automatic reaction here, but I was in shock. All I could do is say, "Who are you? Why are you here?" This probably only lasted for about 30 seconds, but when you're frozen with fear in the middle of the night, 30 seconds becomes a lot longer. The guy didn't move or say anything, just stood there looking at me before finally turning, calmly walking back out of my room. When I was again finally able to move, I turned on all the lights, locked the back door, and called security. To this day, I have no idea who the man was or why he was there. I'm originally from India. My parents sent my sisters and I to an Indian camp so we could learn more about our culture. At the time, I was around 14 years old. I was a standard, young, cute kid. I had been going to this camp for a couple of summers, and this particular summer was an important one. The teachers were extremely excited because they had a yoga guru of some sort visiting. I think he's about 60 years old at the time. He would teach us traditional music and dance. He started noticing me right away and kept on making comments about how great I was doing. As the summer continued, I would frequently find him watching me and talking to the teachers about me. Whenever he fixed my pose, he would linger for a while. These things kept on happening. I then become hyper aware of his presence. Flash to the end of the camp. It's a couple of days before the ending ceremony. A few girls ran up to me and said he has candy in his room. They said that he would give me some if I went up. I really liked sugar. I didn't feel comfortable going alone though, so I had some of the girls go with me. He given them candy immediately, and they all left. When asked for some, he mentioned for me to come inside his room. I shook my head. He kept trying to get me to go inside his room. Finally, he gave up after I wouldn't budge, and said that he needed a kiss in exchange for some candy. Something inside me said run. I started backing away and booked it. At the time, I didn't think much of it. I just knew that something in the situation wasn't right. I think I told my parents because we never went back to that camp again.